And hello and welcome to the paper of the week. My name is Steve and have a look at that. I got married about a month ago, so I was on my honeymoon. So I haven't done this for a while. So it's really good timing that I'm back doing this paper because this is a really exciting paper. I'll hold it up for you. It's going to be available for everyone there. But it says the bitter aftertaste, unintended effects of artificial sweeteners. Now, before you go nuts, or as Matt will say, go postal, it's such a controversial issue, artificial sweeteners. And what I'm going to tell you today is a side effect of artificial sweeteners. But does that mean you should completely never use them again? No. Can you use them? Sure you can. But I just think we should be aware of what they're doing before we're using them. It's like, you can go and eat a McDonald's hamburger. Not good for you, you know that. That's fine, you make a choice to do it. Totally fine. You don't want to go for that run this morning? Totally fine. You know the consequences. As long as you know, you can make what we term an informed choice. And I think information is the best way to get around this. So artificial sweeteners are, of course, sweeteners that don't have any or many calories. And there's lots of them. There's aspartame, there's sucralose or Splenda, asulfamide potassium or ACE-K. There's natural ones like stevia and all the sugar alcohols like maltitol, erythritol, glycerol, those sorts of sugar alcohols that sweeten things too. So there's lots of them. Saccharin is another artificial sweetener. So I guess the million-dollar question is are these things, people say, are these things safe? And I'm going to tell you this paper doesn't address that, but basically, as far as safety, have they been tested with cancer? Sure. They're safe. But what we want to ask a better question would be, are they actually healthy? Are they good? And in the past, I used to think, especially with sucralose, those things about 20 years ago, and started working with it as developing products, it was not absorbed, so it went through your gut, and so we all sort of thought, oh, whatever, because it's barely absorbed. It's found a lot in the fecal matter. So some of the other, like saccharin, asulfamide potassium, and aspartame are absorbed, but sucralose isn't. So it basically goes through your gut, and we didn't think anything of it. But what we're finding now is that there are a lot of people who are complaining they're having side effects to sweeteners. And early on, I would have dismissed them because I thought, well, it's a lot of research. They are, quote, safe. And I'm not saying that's the only thing. And what this review shows is that there are side effects, unintended effects, to your gut microbiome. And that's what the paper says. Unintended effects of these sweeteners on your bugs in your gut, which is the microbiome. And remember, you've got more bugs in your gut than you've got cells in your body. So it's pretty important stuff, these bugs. You've got about 1,000 different bacteria in your gut. They're dominated by two classes of or what we call phylum, if you want the biological term. You've got the firmicutes and bacteroides. So they're the ones. But anyway, you've got thousands of different bugs. Now, what we find is we first started testing these sweeteners on rats. And the reason why they were tested on rats is twofold. The first thing is it's, the ethics surrounding testing on a rat is, pretty easy to get instead of testing on humans, a lot harder. And of course, secondly, rats are more plentiful sort of thing to get your hands on to test. They're easy to test. But thirdly, they're easily to control for. So for example, if you gave a human a sweetener and they got a gut ache, well, they could have, on their way home from the sweetener, gone and stopped at Macca's and got one of those hamburgers I was telling about and got sick from that. So very hard to control for. Rats, you can completely 100% control what they eat and what they drink. So what they found was these particular, and this diagram will be a bit easier for you, is that when they gave, if you look at this top one here, NAS is a sweetener, okay, and NAS. So they gave a sweetener to rats, and what it did was it caused their gut bugs to play up, and you got bad bugs in your gut, nasty ones, and we'll go into detail in a sec. And that led to, and again you'll be able to read this, insulin resistance. Now you might go, so what? Well, if you become insulin resistant too much, that's called type 2 diabetes. If you're insulin resistant, they call it syndrome X or Revan syndrome, and it can predispose you to conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, obesity, acne, all these sorts of conditions. So it does cause insulin resistance. And how we know it was the gut bugs was that following that, they gave them a course of antibiotics to knock out the dysbiotic bacteria, and their insulin resistance disappeared. So they induced it by giving a sweetener, measured their gut bugs, they were all over the place, different, and then they gave them an antibiotic and the insulin levels returned to normal. So I love that. They also got the dysbiotic bacteria. In this study, they got this dysbiotic bacteria and they put it into what they call a germ-free rat, which is a rat that does not have any gut bugs. And they gave them the gut bugs from the rat that was treated with sweetener, and lo and behold, that rat also developed insulin resistance, which proves causal and effect. So they're the two levels of evidence when we look at science. So, you know, there's also just correlation. So if someone had a sweetener and they got insulin resistance, could be other things. But if you got the gut bugs and transferred them to a germ-free mouse and that drove insulin resistance, that's very interesting. So this is very interesting. So if we go down the bottom there, this also reviews papers where they've given it to humans, and the same thing has happened to humans, of course. So it's very interesting that this is an unintended side effect of the sweetener, because the sweetener is supposed to, you know, get you off the sugar, and it does induce insulin resistance. And previous studies have shown that sweeteners do drive insulin release. And a lot of people don't understand that because they think that, oh my God, you've got to have sugar to have insulin release. Well, you've got got heaps of sugar already in your body. It's in your bloodstream, it's in your muscles, in your liver, it's in your brain, it's all over your body. All throughout your body, you've got a certain level of sugar. So if you give a sweetener and it spikes up insulin for a bit, you won't really notice it. It'll just, you know, metabolize some of that sugar away, push it into cells, you know, turn it into fat, whatever it is. And so, you know, I've seen that online where people say, but how can it? Because there's no sugar around, it'll kill you. Well, there is sugar around, there's heaps of it already in the body, and that's why you can live without eating for a couple of weeks. You know, you burn fats and the sugars that you've stored. It's stored sugar is called glycogen, and it's found in your muscles and liver. And also, if your sugar levels drop too low, your liver can actually make more sugar via a process called gluconeogenesis. And gluconeogenesis stands for glucose, neo meaning new, genesis to create. So it creates new glucose, breaks down your muscle to do so. We don't want too much of that because we want muscle, of course. Well, most of us do anyway. So this is what this paper is saying. So I guess the million-dollar question is, how does the sweetener affect you? Well, how it affects you is very different to how it affects person B. Because person A, me, and person B have different gut bugs. So if we have different gut bugs, the sweetener can affect people differently. So it is correct to say that if you have a sweetener, it has no effect on me, I'm fine, I'm still lean, I'm still fine. That's good. But if someone has a dysbiotic bacteria already or is prone to that sort of thing, taking a sweetener in can have a side effect that can induce insulin resistance. So we've got to be careful of that, and we've got to be aware that sort of the person who says that sweeteners are bad for them is correct, and the person that says sweeteners have no effect on me is also correct. You know, parallel thinking, where both, it's like saying, you know, one man's food is another man's poison, the classic saying by Hippocrates. It is absolutely true in this case. So sweeteners, you know, are they bad? Firstly, there's no nutritional value, so they're not ever going to be good for you. There are soluble fibers which can be sweeteners, which can have some beneficial effects, but the ones we're talking about today, the artificial sweeteners, you know, what we call the non-calorific artificial sweeteners, the NAS, which is what this paper was saying, the NAS in the bag there, they're not going to ever be, quote, good for you. They're not artificial sweeteners. So that's the story with sweeteners. To summarize, if you take a sweetener, it's not absorbed very well, it stays in your gut, changes your gut bugs, which can lead to insulin resistance. We know this because of rat studies and human studies, and when we reverse the gut dysbiosis by giving antibiotics, the insulin resistance disappears as well. Now, the gut has a huge role to play in health, and hopefully today's snapshot of paper gives you a great insight into that. Anyway, thanks for listening and have a great day.